This is Nat Williams, and I hail from outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
And this is Brian Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More, Worldwide TV Network, iTube 247 out of Franklin, Tennessee, WomanOnTV.tv and iTube 247. Obviously, again, iHeart Radio. Been doing way too many shows and everything like that. So this is interesting because talk about your profession, talk about what you've been doing. You've been a busy man. We were going to actually do something in December, and then everything has just been wacky for everybody.
Well, it's been a crazy time, as you know, with the pandemic and so many other things that are happening in the world. But it's all good. We're busy and moving about. So there's a part of us that wants to complain, but I guess we shouldn't.
Well, I've been telling everybody that I saw this coming in 2018. I just didn't know what date it was going to start on. I did not know what the name of the virus is going to be, but 2020 was our best year ever. And it was one of those things, if you took advantage of the opportunities of what was there with the layoff of everything, why everything was down, people have been creating a lot of great things. How about you? What's been going on with your company? Talk about that.
Sure. You're right. I think often in adversity, there's a real opportunity to create some wonderful things. Often that creates a mandate for change, and it gives you permission to do some stuff, have some conversations, create some products that otherwise would not be possible. So for us, we were able to begin some work on looking at a problem that faces our city, which is Philadelphia, which is a city that has a growing, as lots of cities do, a growing murder rate, and trying to enter the conversation as to why that's happening, and more importantly, what can be done. And so we published a book called the 4Ms of Safety and Success. And the 4Ms stand for mapping, mediation, mental health and wellness, and mentorship. And we believe that those 4Ms are the things that are contributing to the violence that is going on. That when you look at people that are successful and ones that are challenged, you'll find that those four things are either in play or not in play. And we believe if we can help to bring all of those things, sometimes you'll have communities that have a mentorship program, or communities that have a great focus on mental health. But it's really all of those things being equally weighted, that it's important that you have a map and you know where you want to go, and you have a mentor, and that there's mediation so that you know if there's a problem that you can go and there's someone that you can lean on to resolve it. So it's all of those things that are working that make a difference. So again, having a chance to publish that and to put together a plan and to begin starting to walk that through and helping people to see where it could have some viability has been good. So as you said, it's a tough time. A lot of things are going on, but it gives us a mandate to have some courageous conversations.
I like the 4Ms. I have something called the 4Es on our rating systems, whether it's a brand, whether it's a person, whether it's a movie, CD, all of that stuff. I actually like that. And it is about a mandate. It is about meditation. It is about wellness. All of that is important, and especially what people are going through now. Whether they're locked down with anxiety. I think of those people who might have been alcoholics or might have had drug problems, being by themselves and not being able to talk to someone in person. That's difficult. It really screws with your mind. Go a little bit more into your book. Do you have a copy of your book of what?
Sure.
I want to see that so we can show the audience, but talk about why that's relevant, because I love the title. I love the 4Ms. Very, very important.
Sure. And one of the things that's important is trying to come up with something that, as you look at a problem of violence, it can give you some answers there. But I use that same template. I finished up a second doctorate in, my first one is in education. I got 13 years ago. And in December of 2020, I finished up my second doctorate in social work. And I used that same 4Ms to look at the runaway problem that foster kids have. And so what we did is worked with them to come up with the kids in foster care, to come up with a 4Ms plan for all kids, or you have 100 kids in our foster, in our group home program. And we instituted that. And what we saw in about 3 months period of time, we saw a 50% reduction in kids running away because they had a 4Ms plan. So I believe that the city of Philadelphia needs a 4Ms plan, but we also could see the application that just a person, a kid, a 13-year-old, 14, 15-year-old kid having a 4Ms plan that gives them a direction of where they want it to go makes a difference. So I think that, often we think that when we develop something, it has an application over here, but not over here. But one of the things that we can see with these 4Ms, it brings it all together. That, mapping is a universal need, whether you're a corporation or an individual. You need to know where you're going. You need to have an idea of where you're going. That mental health and a focus on wellness, whether you're a corporation or whether an individual, you need to be focused on that. Mediation, how do you resolve issues as a corporation, a community, or a person? And again, mentorship, who you're modeling yourself after, who do you lean on, who has your back? Again, a community, a corporation, or a person. So again, I think that often we don't try to find those common denominators that really boil things down to the very basic that we could use, whether you're studying an AWOL problem or community violence. And I think that those are the things that are laying right there for us to work on, and that are universal, that we need to take advantage of. So again, we've been very blessed with being able to stumble onto that and being able to use that and seeing it make a big difference in people's lives, and especially at a time when there's a lot of stuff going on that is beyond our control, that there's some stuff that we can do within our control to try to bring some stabilization.
Give those 4Ms again.
Sure. There's mapping. There is mental health and wellness. There is mediation, and there's mentorship. Those are
so now when it comes to, again, if you don't know where you're going, and there's a lot of people right now that don't know where you're going, that's why I would suggest your book, because that's an important aspect. And I'm telling everybody, what do you want to do? I don't want to hear 5 years from now. I just want to hear, you might be in 15-minute to 15-minute mode. And that's where, sure, because of the chaos that's going on around you, whether you're stuck at home working with a family when you're not used to working at home, when you're used to going to the office. And I keep telling everybody, it's like Disney. Disney's lot is pretty empty because everybody's working at home. They're still paying for what's going on there, but everybody's at home. You got more people stressing the internet now, more people are streaming. And it's a lot for people. And some people just can't work at home. They got to have that regular routine of getting up, brushing your teeth, getting in the shower, walking into that office and being prepared to work mentally. And then, the wellness part of stuff, man, people are really having a hard time with that. I look forward to reading your book because you of what I'm hearing so far, you got it right on. You hit it right on the nail on the head at that point of aspect of things.
Sure. And Brian, I hope that, whether again, you're a young person or an older person, these are relevant issues, whether you're preparing for retirement, or, a young person just planning your future. These are all relevant issues. These are all concerns that we should be focused on. And going back to your point, Brian, about the mapping, if you don't have a plan, you'll always be working for someone that does. And so it's so important that you figure out what yours is. And I believe also that we're always working for somebody else. We're accountable and responsible to somebody else, but we want to make sure that we're aligned with other people, places, and things that bring out the best in ourselves and others. Again, we're always going to be under someone else's leadership and headship. And I think this theory or belief that we're independent is somewhat misleading. I think we're very much interdependent on each other. But it's important that we just understand we should have an idea of where we're going and not just be led blindly. And that's why a map is so important. When I was a youngster, I was in foster care, and there was a Catholic nun who ran the agency, and I was sitting in front of the administration building one day. My brothers and sisters were coming from another agency to come visit, and their van broke down and they couldn't make it. And so she saw me sitting there and said, "Nat, stay there for a second. I'm going to go get something." and she went and got a bicycle, and she came back and gave it to me. And I was happy, and I rode the bicycle back to my cottage, and one of my cottage mates asked me, can I borrow it? And I said, sure. And I watched him ride the bicycle, and I watched the back of his head as he rode away. And something dawned on me, and I was about 12, 13 years old, that if I wasn't careful, that was going to be the story of the rest of my life. I'd be sitting there telling people about, my mother died when I was 5 years old and left me as an orphan, and I was in an agency, and this was my story, and then waiting for someone to give me a handout. But I realized I wanted to be that Catholic nun, not a white Irish, a woman, but I wanted to be the person that occupied that job. I wanted to be an executive director. So at 12 and 13 years old, I started signing my name, Nathaniel J. Williams, executive director. It took me another 12 years to make that happen, but I've had that title ever since. And again, it gave me a map. And so when life introduced certain things, because it didn't fit into Nathaniel J. Williams, executive director, it never happened. So again, I think that mapping is so important. And that, again, it gives us it helps us to define who we want to be, so that we're clear. So again, I believe also that if it's not written, it's not going to happen. And so I think, again, just scribbling it down, whatever you want it to be, what your aspirations are, and finding a way to be in fellowship with other people. Research has shown that you're not going to be more successful than your 5 closest friends. And I think that's important to think about who's surrounded, because often they won't let you be more successful than who they are. And I think that it's important that you look for qualities in people, but you also pay attention to some qualities that we found that you want to find in those people. And there are 5 qualities that we've learned: that you're looking for a sense of humor, and not that they're trying to be or you're trying to be funny, but there's a sense of lightness about how they handle things. There's a sense of humility. There's a sense of optimism, that they're mindful, and that they're focused on empowerment. So be mindful of the 5 closest friends, but then make sure those 5 closest friends have those 5 closest friends embodied in who they are as well. And again, Brian, they have a sense of humor, they have a sense of humility, they're optimistic, they're mindful, and also they're focused on empowerment.
Well, yes, and to add on to that also, those 5 friends, and I always tell people this, if your 5 friends aren't growing with you, you have to sort of like sometimes release, because another 5 people will come in that are better than them, because if you're growing and they're not growing, it's not going to work. You have to have someone not in competition, but someone to challenge you. There was no Larry Bird without Magic Johnson. And one was on the East Coast, one was on the West. But that rivalry ended up being best friends. You need someone to play off of, whether it's an idea or whatever, and just go forward. I've always told people I've never been in competition with anybody, because I wasn't at their level. I always knew 2 things: either I was going to outlast you, or I was going to just keep working and being consistent and just keep going forward and straight up. Those are the 2 things I knew. Those 2 things till this day of what got me where I was going. I had to either outlast you, or you dropped out. You ended up getting another job. And then we just kept whittling away. There was the 3 roads. The one that's really traveled, the one that's less traveled, and the one that you create on your own. I've always had the one I had to create on the road, which is the hardest one, because there is no map for it, which goes to 4 M's. And that's why I like that. I love the 4 M's. I think it's brilliant.
Good. Very good. And you're right. And, it takes a certain amount of confidence in yourself to create that road, where there is no pavement, there is no gravel, there is no markers, and, there is no plan. But it's important but I think that if you look at your body, you have 10 fingers, none of those 10 fingers match the other finger. And there are 10 of them that don't match each other. And I think that that's a memo from my higher power that, you have an ability to touch things and to leave an indelible mark that is unlike anyone else. And, that higher power was so good at what they're able to do, that no other person's finger matches yours, and on your body alone, that higher power did that 10 times. So I think the power that we have within us, you just have to look at your fingers to remember that. And often we go through things in life that gets us to question that, and we feel somewhat disenchanted. But again, we should look at that as just a reminder that I'm, good 10 times over, and my fingers remind me of that.
Well, the other thing about that is a lot of people, especially younger people, don't realize that it doesn't happen overnight. Like you said, 12 years of you saying your name. That's consistency, but that's also that drive and that's that goal. And I always tell people, I remember when I started Movie Reviews and More, October of 1993. It was a shaman who I still have to this day. She goes, Brian, you're a late bloomer. Had you had done all this before, you'd be married with 3.2 kids and divorced twice. When she said that, I had a sign of relief because it told me not everybody is supposed to make it in your 20s. That's not how it works. I'm in that thing where we got our first million views April 16th of 2019. We're at 7.1 million views and counting a day right now.
Wow.
I didn't know that was going to happen 2015, 16, 17. It started coming into my mind in 2018. And then all of a sudden it started to skyrocket. So again, I had to take myself out of California to go to Tennessee to shoot shows, to do an interview, to meet somebody else to make it happen. I think it's brilliant that you were writing your name like that, because that's how it starts. It's that intention and being consistent with that, as you say, mapping it out.
And Brian, you bring up a really good point. There's a thing called geography of success. Geography makes a very big difference. You just said it. California is one place, Tennessee's another, and you're saying that Tennessee, that geography, and if you're big on acronym, that that geography of success, it goes that you have to figure out where you're going to go. Every place can't afford, Brian. Every place can't afford Nat. You just got to figure out that place. So you bring up a very, very, very good point. And you got to be willing to just pick up and go where that geography can afford you. So I think that story you share, Brian, is one you have to keep telling people over and over again. And there's a big world out there. So we're just talking about the little old United States. I remember watching a professor on TV that saying that the way they make maps, they inflate the size of the United States. It's not really as big on the map as they make it out to be. It's actually smaller and not as centered as it is on the map. So again, the United States is a small little place compared to the big world. But again, if Tennessee's the place to be, then that's where it is. And if Tennessee runs out and it's someplace else, I'm sure Brian will make it. If that's where someplace else calls you, that's where Brian will be. But that's why Brian's successful and has gone from 0 to 7 point, whatever the number you mentioned, a million, because you're following your calling, and it's only a calling meant for Brian. So,
well, it is how you were talking about. It is what you said it is. Most people do give up because they, I always said this, two people come up with the same idea around the planet. You just don't know who the other person is. It's up to that person to take it and just go with it no matter what. It's hard to keep it going when people can't see your vision, because people, instead of having 15 seconds attention span, it's down to 8. That's not a lot of time. And if they can't see it, but you got a great idea and you don't know where to go, sometimes you have to wait for that other person to come in. It may be another year or two. It could be 5 years, like you said, 12 years of signing your name. I get that. I totally understand it. It's brilliant because it's consistency. It's no matter what, you're doing it every day. And it's ingrained in your brain. It's a mindset. And a lot of people, they've lost it. And it's unfortunate. I mean, I look forward to reading your book now because I get it. I understand. And a lot of people, I always tell people, a lot of people, you're not supposed to get fame and fortune in your early 20s because it may not last. And a lot of times you're not set up for it because you're still growing. A lot of times the older you are, the more set up you are because you've been through life experiences, if that makes sense.
It does. It definitely does, and you're ready, and you've been primed, and I think the other piece, Brian, is you're going to you're going to affect other people's lives, and I think
Exactly.
it's so important that you get your stuff ready, and that you're just not whimsical. And sometimes some people can do it earlier, some people need to do it later, but when the time's right, you know it's right, and part of what you need to do is to stop questioning when it is what it is, when it is, how it is, where it is, and just embrace that and make it the most. Because I think often those questions are going to take away from the moment and not accentuate the moment. So just be prepared when the opportunity presents itself, and make the most of it. And just remember that's a blessing. I think often in life we get confused between a blessing and a burden. And so often things that are a burden we think are a blessing, and things that are a blessing we think are a burden. And that's where fellowship is so important. I think, in a show like this, Brian, Brian helps us people to realize and try to distinguish between the two, and offer some conversation and fellowship, because it's so easy to get confused between the two. So again, I think it's, that's an important piece to, settle your spirit, get some information, hear some different perspectives, so you're not twisted in how you're looking at the world, because it's so easy to get things twisted.
When did you know that you made it? Was there a certain period that you just know as you were getting your education going on and okay, I got it now. No, I'm going to go for this one too.
It was really, it was about maybe 12 years ago. Success Magazine had run an article, and toward the end of the article, in the profile, the author had said, he's accomplished more in his, 40 years of life than, most people have in a lifetime. And it really was when someone else said it that it got me to sit back and think about, wow, I never thought about it that way. So that was really when I began to realize that, again, the blessings that I've received. But I've lost my mother when I was 5 years old. I don't know who my father is. I spent 13 years in foster care. I've had a foster son murder another foster son. So I've had a lot of hardships. My wife and I have a 14-year-old son with autism. So at the same time, I've been, had some blessings. I've also had some hardships and some challenges. It's important that we just weigh all of those things together, and just remember that. Um, um, it's given to us because it is. Going back to my son with autism, a friend had said to me, my wife, that someone has to be born with autism. I'm so glad that Taj was born to you. And when we first heard that, we looked at each other like, what did he just say? And once we settled our spirit, we realized that that was a compliment. That everyone's going to have some level of adversity given to them. And what it's said and done is whatever adversity was given to me, that I managed it well as whatever success was given to me, that I've managed well. But more importantly, whatever adversity was given. So as I hope when it's all said and done, that as an orphan, he was the best orphan you could find, whatever the circumstances. And I think that's what's important, that we show people that with the challenges that we're given, that we can make it work, and we can overcome it, and we can deal with it. And in my years of working with adults with intellectual disabilities, I have found that a lot of those individuals are the most compassionate, intelligent, caring. But the label says that they're intellectually disabled, and
Not at
I
all. Not at all.
but again, I just think we have to just recognize that there's so much more there than just the title, and we just have to, again, settle ourselves to realize that we're given this because it is believed that we can handle it, and we can bring a spotlight to it, and encourage others that there's a way out and there's a way up. But we can only do that by not trying to hide out and trying to be transparent about it and talking about it. And again, that's the beauty of what you're doing with your show, Brian, is you're bringing a spotlight to lots of different issues and people and places and things, and that's important. So I encourage you and commend you for what you've done, and that you're growing because you're doing the right thing. And that's the beautiful part about doing the right thing. It keeps growing and it keeps getting better.
Well, I have to talk about autistic kids or people in general, because when I had my horse ranch, I didn't realize until then, we always took in problem horses. My partner, she was very good at horses that nobody wanted. And she was good at just, they listened to her. She was like the horse whisperer. I was around Caesar Milan, the dog whisperer at that point. And we never got a chance. We would always talk outside of our ranches, which was interesting. One thing I noticed, like horses, specifically horses and dogs, love people who are artistic. They're very, very special. I'm not even talking Rain Man. I'm talking Temple Grandin. Temple Grandin created all these things that people didn't even know about with cattle, making it a humane, that they enter through the slaughter in a humane way. And I actually got a chance to meet her. It's not like you can touch them because they don't like to be touched. But what goes through their mind is just brilliance. They are just brilliant. And if you get to understand them and they let you in, that means that's something special. And it's not taken for granted. And I've always admired that going, this is a decade now, going back to understanding that. I always think about that. So on our new ranch, we're going to have Mustangs, and we're going to have kids that or mentally challenged or physically challenged, because I understand it. One of my good friends was in a wheelchair. He could drive, and I always thought that was cool, but he couldn't get on the floor and play with his kid. So I always did, and I never forgot that. So I've always had a heart for things like that. Always showing compassion, no matter what, because no matter what, you might have been like that if you believe in past life regression. You might have been like that in another realm, in another lifetime. You don't know. And always be careful of what those words you put out there. And I'm sure you got that in your book somewhere. Words are very, very powerful. It can haunt you, right?
Yeah, very, very powerful. And the funny thing that you share about, the belief about people with autism. As I said, my son has autism, and often people put themselves upon people with autism. The beautiful part about my son is I'll come in, so most of the time pretty late at night. And I used to, when he was younger, try to hug him and kiss him, and that's not working. Now when I come in, he will, eventually, within about 3 to 5 minutes, he will come, get close, and then kiss me on his own. That is not an autistic behavior.
Right.
But rather than, because he does it on his own volition, and it's not, a kiss and a hug, it's just a peck. So again, the capacity is there, but I think often we make it so uncomfortable. They take it, they get so turned off by it. They don't want to do any aspect of it. But again, allowing him to figure out what's comfortable for him, he's able to offer his own greeting in his own kind of way, and not be smothered, because I want him to give me the embrace I was looking for. So I think often we believe that they can't do certain things, but again, they want to do it on their own, and their own accord, and their own socially acceptable way, and not ours. And so, and he does it that way when it comes to affection, but also he taught himself how to swim. We have a pool, and we were, trying to, but teach him. And just one day we just turned around and he was swimming and he's been swimming ever since. So again, some of the things that we just think that are, and he'll be in the water for hours upon hours upon hours. And he's just as happy can be. So again, he's 14 now. And he's a twin. He has a sister who is typical. But he's just a wonderful young man. We're so blessed. But again, such great capabilities, but the things that he's able to do, it just blows my mind. But and again, when we saw him swimming, and he's probably been swimming now for maybe about 6 or 7 years, it just truly blew our mind.
Is she autistic too, or no?
She's typical, not autistic at all.
That's
So,
interesting. What was that? You probably going to write a book on that one. That's interesting. I've not heard of that one.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, we went for him to be evaluated. Originally, we thought he had a hearing issue, and then we had the hearing issue addressed, and we realized it's not hearing, there's something more. And so we went to the evaluation, and the evaluator said, "Have you ever seen him twirl?" And I was like, "Ma'am, he never twirled until we were sitting outside in your waiting room." That was the so I don't know what is in your waiting room, but that was the first time he ever twirled, and he's been twirling ever since. So he
You
was
mean
about
spinning
3 years.
around or no?
Yes, yeah, no, yeah, spinning around.
Interesting.
Twirl was in her. His autistic features began to show as time went on. But that was interesting that she asked that question, and we could say to them, "Today was the first day in your waiting room. Did he ever start spinning?" And there were no other kids there. We were only ones waiting there. But I don't know what he felt in that waiting room. But that was the first time he ever started to spin. But that and that's when we realized that after that evaluation and some other stuff that he was autistic. But up until about then, we knew we thought again it was the hearing issue, and that he was more isolative because he couldn't hear. But again, once we had the tubes put in and the water drained, we realized it was more than just that. But we were very fortunate to have a wonderful school district that and special supports that he's really continued to grow and do remarkably well. And we have 8 kids, 5 of them that are still home, and his brothers and sisters are really very supportive of him. And his twin is you can't get within inches of him because of her protection of him. So he's very, very fortunate to have brothers and sisters that truly love and care for him. So, and that's often one of the concerns that parents of special needs kids is they sometimes I've worked in the field for many years before having a child of my own with special needs, which has really been something interesting to deal with. But in talking to parents of people with special needs, sometimes their prayer is that their child dies before they do. And you begin to understand where that comes from once you have a kid with special needs, is that you don't, sometimes you worry about what's going to happen to them when you're no longer here. But one of the nice things is that their brothers and sisters, and Taj's brothers and sisters really have a very special bond. So you feel somewhat comforted that if you're no longer here, that he'll be looked at by his brothers and sisters. You pray that the system will offer supports and services, but there's nothing like family to continue to offer those supports and services. And I remember having 2 colleagues come over to the house that work in the field as well, Maureen and Dee. And they came over and they were talking in the living room, and all the other 4 got around Taj like poor Maureen and Dee were coming to take Taj away. They were just coming to say hello. But it was wonderful to see how protective they are of their brother. But again, that's what you want to know as a mother and father of a kid with special needs, that they're going to be safe and okay. Because often they don't have the same abilities to keep themselves safe on their own.
Talk about why people should buy this book, and also your social media links.
Sure. They should buy the book because I believe it'll make some sense and be helpful. And as we are just talking about my son with autism, that he needs a map, and we need to make sure that his mental health and wellness is addressed and paid attention to, and that there's places for mediation, and that there's mentors out there, as I talked about, his brothers and sisters being there. So again, it's a universal concept of how we can support each other, how we need to be supported as individuals. So that's the reason why I would hope that they would buy the book and entertain the concept, because I think it would open up some avenues of successful ideas on how to solve some of these issues. I'm on, Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram. So a lot of them are, using Dr. Nat Williams as the lead-in. So if you Google, you'll be able to YouTube as well. So you'll be able to find me relatively easy. I've written about 9 or 10 different books. So you can look at Amazon as another location and my website is pretty simple. It's www.drdrnatwilliams.com. So that's another way to reach out and make contact as well.
Before we go, what is your inspiration since it's Black History Month? What's an inspirational thing for you? Who inspired you to be who you are?
Really, it was a lot of different people. When you lose your mom at age 5, she died of a cranial aneurysm. You're often yearning for her to come back and or yearning for someone to take her spot. And I realized when I was older, no one ever took her spot. But whenever one person left, there was always someone else that picked up. And I was never forsaken. I was a little sometimes for stupid not to realize I was not forsaken, but I was never forsaken. There was always someone there. And in all fairness, sometimes they were Black, sometimes they were white, sometimes they were men, sometimes they were women. It was a diverse group. And sometimes, some people need a whole cadre of people that that they just couldn't have just one person or two people. And I may have been one of those people that needed the whole village to help raise and a whole shift of different people. So I've been very blessed by lots of different people that believed and gave me chances. And sometimes when I made mistakes looked the other way and saw something deeper there and hung in there to give me an opportunity. Again, I've been very blessed, and especially had employers early on like that who really tolerated a lot of stuff and covered for me in ways that they probably shouldn't have. But I think that when they hopefully look at me today, they realize it was worth it. Again, when I look at what I think we all need to do is to look out for each other, especially people that have been less given opportunities to open those doors and to lend a hand. And then more importantly, once we get an opportunity, to open it up for other people and do what we can to help others. When I went for my master's degree, a professor was like, "You know what? I'm really upset with you, Nat." And he said, and I said, "Why?" He said, "You know what? You have a big mouth. There's a television, there's a telephone, and there's Telnat." And there was a part of me that was a little bit upset with that, but there's another part of me that was really happy with that because I think that that's important. That if it's good enough for me, it's good enough for other people. And so as I've gone on and gotten higher education, I've pulled other people to do the same thing. So I can I can't count on my hands the amount of people that have gone on for master's and doctorate degrees just as I have. That I think it's so important that we pull other people to the same places we've been in. So as you've asked, Brian, there's too many people to mention that have made a difference in my life. And I think that's what's important, is that we all do what we can. And often we just don't know the little things we do one of the things I wished I would have been able to say to Sister Mary Patrick before she passed away, the little bicycle and what it meant to me. I think that's what she just did. I don't think she realized what it did, but it really left a very strong mark in my life, that I wanted to be an executive director who cared and would just check in with people. And again, I just think that's just the way she was, and didn't think that was anything special, but it really is something that is extremely special. So I try to care about people every day, and in every way that I can.
I like that. Give your social media links one more time again for anybody who might.
Sure. On Facebook, it's
and let me see your book too.
Sure. It's Nathaniel J. Williams. LinkedIn, the same. My website is www.drnatwilliams.com. So again, if you just type in Nathaniel J. Williams, you'll get all those different links. And Brian, I really want to thank you so much for your time. As you said, this has been hard to put together, but a lot of times that's when things are good. Sometimes you have to go through some hoops to make them happen. So I thank you so much for hanging in there with us to make it happen. It's much appreciated.
Well, Dr. Williams, it's an honor and pleasure to have you on Movie Reviews and More. I do want to read your book. I mean,
I'll get it to you, I promise.
The 4 E's is my thing. You got the 4 M's, caught me right there. That's enough to say, okay, I got to read about mapping, because it's. I think what we're talking about is the same things, but you wrote the book, so I can't read what you got in it, because that's important. If you don't got a roadmap, where are you going? Except maybe in a circle. There you
go.
And as I always say, thank you so much for coming on. And I have to say this: if you see someone without a smile, please give them one of yours, because the world needs it. I'm Brian Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More, and we will see you next week.